The mountains are illuminated by a flash of light and a rumble, indicating the beginning of a massive event. Flashes of fire and a tense atmosphere appear in the background of the huge palace. An elderly man in dark robes looks forward with a serious expression. His gaze is filled with cold determination and focus. He notices that there are a great many guests among those gathered. Rugged warriors with weapons stand out among the arrivals. Representatives of the other faction appear, and they too are determined. The male monks are preparing for the coming battle, very serious. One of the opponents loudly exclaims, "Great demon sect." He asks how it feels to be surrounded like a rat. The leader of the Jongnam faction declares that all battle factions are now united against the sect. Everyone accuses the demon sect of ignorance and demands payback for its insolence. The order goes out, "Open the door." The gaze of the red eye through the slit is accompanied by words about the reincarnation of the heavenly demon. Everyone is stunned when the next leader of the demon sect appears. Someone calls out the name Gutchin, and the leader responds lightly. The leader of the opponents is furious and says he will end all evil deeds here and now. The sect leader is perplexed as to what his opponent is even talking about. He is annoyed by the behavior of his enemies. He asks if they are all old men and notices how annoying it is. He's surprised the old men still want to feud. The sect leader Gutchin, in anger, promises to destroy all enemies today. Opponents are surprised at the audacity of his statement. They call the cult leader an incredibly arrogant old man. Gutchin calls for them to come in and stop the idle talk. The attack begins. One of the opponents shouts that this is the source of evil. The enemies call for the demon sect to be killed. The sectarians are driven to battle. The leader orders his followers to destroy enemies who don't know their place. The sect warriors enter the battle with battle cries. A brutal sword fight begins between the factions. Monk attacks the opponent with his spear. Someone is watching the battle from the sidelines, keeping at the ready. Suddenly, there is an explosion in the center of the courtyard. The sect warrior deals a powerful blow with an energy effect. The monk's face reflects determination and rage. Gutchin is shrouded in an ominous aura as he prepares to do battle. Danger and determination glow in his blood-red gaze. Opponents are amazed and frightened by what is happening. The sect leader bursts into battle enveloped in energy power. He strikes with his claws, filling the battlefield with fear. One of the enemy's supporters tries to cheer up the others, but sees that the enemy is still determined. Gutchin fought on, swooping down on the enemy with a powerful attack. He rushed forward, leaving a trail of purple behind him, and his opponents could not resist this power. Gutchin stood under the moon with a sword in his hand, surrounded by a bloody aura, causing those around him to fear. The terrified enemies shouted that a heavenly demon had descended upon them. They felt horror, for no one had told them of the appearance of such a monster. Gutchin dealt with one of the attackers without mercy, piercing him with his sword. His movements were swift and deadly, his enemies flying apart, unable to withstand the onslaught. Gutchin continued to fight, unleashing a sinister sword power. He expressed contempt for the bravery of his enemies, marveling that they had come to kill him with such pitiful forces. Gutchin was outraged that his enemies had so underestimated him, thinking him helpless. One of the older opponents recognized Gutchin as the founder of the current demon cult, saying that if he came to their school, it would also become just as demonic. The enemy acknowledged that Gutchin was the incarnation of a heavenly demon, but hinted that they had not come without preparation. The old man demanded that Gutchin's head be brought to him without fail, promising to keep his word. At this time, a mysterious warrior in a dark cloak surrounded by a blue glow appeared. Gutchin was surprised at his new opponent, stating that he was seeing him for the first time. A battle ensued, and the mysterious warrior launched a lightning attack on Gutchin. Gutchin's eyes flashed. He mustered the will to respond to the blow. He repelled the attack with the blue light of his sword, showing incredible strength. The sect leader was surprised that there was a person like this stranger in the Central Plains. Gutchin glared at his enemy and began to wonder about his origins, whether he was from Shaolin, Wudang, or Jongnam. The mysterious warrior remained speechless, hiding his intentions under his hood. Gutchin resented his opponent's inconsideration, reproaching him for his lack of manners. Gutchin then grinned, assuring that even if the enemy came from respected schools, he would still lose to him. His eyes glowed with a bloodshot light, reflecting determination and fury in battle. Facing the dark aura of the enemy, he saw the enemy's strength. A bright flash erupted on the battlefield. Two deadly forces collided. The unknown enemy made a daring attack, jumping down and displaying graceful agility. The mystery opponent recognized Gutchin's skill, calling it impressive. Gutchin realized that the enemy had finally realized his power and promised that he would die here today. He laughed, declaring that a lowly enemy wouldn't be able to kill him, Gutchin. But there was a flicker of surprise in his gaze, as if he sensed something amiss. Gutchin tensed up, realizing that something unexpected and threatening had appeared. The mysterious warrior had already made his strike, judging by the hole across from him. Gutchin's inner voice realized he was unable to catch even the slightest movement of his opponent. The next moment was hard. Gutchin was badly wounded, blood flowing from his mouth. The mysterious enemy realized that this was his last chance and prepared to strike a decisive blow. Gutchin lunged in fury, calling his opponent a scoundrel and accusing him of babbling. In the same instant, the warrior was stunned. Even after being hit in the stomach and under tremendous pressure, Gutchin continued to stand on his feet. Gutchin shouted he had achieved such strength at the cost of incredible effort, and his enemies were unable to even imagine what he had gone through. At this moment, someone shouted out, addressing his teacher, and Gutchin, despite the pain, was ready to continue the fight to the end. Gutchin sees the building engulfed in flames and a battle breaks out amidst the fire. The old man enters the battle with determination with sword in hand. Gutchin, blooded, screams with rage, his eyes poured red. Gutchin is striking his opponent. The fight is getting fiercer. He continues to scream, with only anger and pain in his gaze. Full of hatred, Gutchin shouts threats to his enemies. His scream echoes in the night, his face full of determination and rage. Gutchin shouts once more, unable to contain his anger. He leans over and it's like he's losing consciousness. His head falls to the floor, watching the burning palace. Looking at the old man with the sword in his chest, thinks he doesn't want to die like that. Gutchin lies unconscious on the ground, his face covered in blood. Memories from his childhood come back to him. How he practiced, threw rocks, and fought with a stick. In the flashback, young Gutchin turns away from the two laughing students. He sits on the edge of a cliff, looking pensively at the mountains. An older man walks up to him and puts a hand on his shoulder, trying to be supportive. The wise old man looks at young Gutchin carefully. A smile appears on the young hero's face. He feels a connection with the old man. Gutchin's lifeless body sinks into darkness. He doesn't want to die, remembering the old man. Gutchin hears voices and wonders what the sounds are reaching him. A man appears in front of him and informs the others that Gutchin is awake, though everything seems very noisy. One of the aggressive young men yells at him to wake up. Gutchin opens his eyes. They are filled with anxiety and anger. There are three guys standing in front of him. Only one expresses surprise that they thought Gutchin was dead. The main ringleader announces that the first round of their game is over. Now the second round begins. Gutchin doesn't realize who these people are. He is surprised by what is happening. In front of his eyes, he notices some sort of roll forming. A mission appears on the scroll: clear 0 quarters trash, limit 30 seconds. It also says that Gutchin is rewarded for completing the mission and death for failing. In front of Gutchin's eyes, time starts counting down. He doesn't realize what's happening. Gutchin clutches at his chest with consternation as he ponders what happened. Someone lifts him up and orders him to straighten up, and Gutchin remembers his death at the hands of a strange man. He wonders if it's a dream, because he can't be dead. The main instigator says he'll start first. Someone insults Gutchin, and the countdown begins. Suddenly, Gutchin attacks the attacker with incredible strength, causing the others to be surprised. Gutchin is annoyed at what's going on and inwardly notes that he's already gotten rid of the first opponent of the four. The other guy flies out of the room from Gutchin's punch. Witnesses to what is happening are in shock, not realizing what is going on. An intimidating aura manifests around Gutchin. He radiates power and determination. School children watching him call what happened crazy and ask each other what it was. Gutchin receives a scroll with a mission to throw out the trash in 30 seconds, promising an unknown reward for success. He's confused by what's happening, trying to figure out who appeared before him. Gutchin doubts his sanity, thinking he may have lost his mind. He notices a warning in the scroll: if he fails the task, death. Gutchin stands alone, watching the scroll floating in front of him. He realizes with alarm that he is already dead. His heart begins to beat with incredible vigor, as if coming to life again. Gutchin grasps his chest in sharp pain and fear. Shocked, he inspects his senses, suspecting he is alive again. A phrase appears on the scroll that his mind has been possessed. Gutchin is shocked, as it's a matter of completely taking over the mind. He recalls that similar techniques are used by members of the blood cult. The question overwhelms him: who could have done this to him? The scroll promises that if the hero completes all the missions, he can return to his former body. The reward for completion will be access to a new level and experience. Gutchin is surprised, not fully believing what is happening. Images from the past come to mind, someone holding him by the shoulder. The wise old man makes it clear that Gutchin has another chance. The mission is refreshing. You have to clean up the trash in the time remaining. Gutchin feels confused, but his heart still flutters. He realizes that what is happening is real, judging by the surroundings. The place itself seems unfamiliar to him, a classroom filled with students. He realizes that his unusual condition is further proof of the reality of events. Gutchin scolds the scroll, not knowing what was done to it, but intends to submit to the situation. For now, he decides to act on the rules of the mission by observing others. Gutchin encourages a group of students to approach him, acting confidently. One of the students lunges at Gutchin with his fists. He doesn't even move, he's so cocky. The swing seems to slow for him. He delivers a powerful energy strike, knocking back the opponent. Everyone is shocked at Gutchin's strength. The striker is thrown back against the wall. The second student pounces with shouts, but internally the hero is annoyed. Young tries to land a front kick, but it's easily dodged. He warns the second opponent to stay away. Gutchin is furious at being tried to boss him around. An intimidating power emanates from his eyes, threatening his opponent. Gutchin unleashes a powerful blow on the enemy with words of threat. He vows to brutally punish the enemy with his own hands. After dealing with almost everyone, Gutchin realizes that there is only one opponent left. He searches for the ladder, wondering where the ladder has disappeared to. A young man walks into the classroom and a student panics and reports that someone has just run away. Gutchin looks confused and is tensely silent. He realizes that something is going wrong and realizes that everything is completely screwed up. A timer appears on the screen, and it is clear that death follows in the event of failure. The protagonist hurries along the school corridor, trying to avoid danger. The student tries to escape because if he is caught, he will not live. The bastard threatens that he's now in Dong-ho's hands. The timer keeps counting down, and the student is angry that he interfered. With seconds left on the clock, the attacker is practically catching up to his victim. At that moment, Gutchin appears and strikes a surprise blow. He attacks the bastard with determination and fury. With burning eyes, Gutchin catches up to the enemy and shouts for him not to try to run away. He strikes with force, accompanying it with a scolding. The opponent, struck by such force, flies away and punches through the wall. Gutchin emerges from the devastation, standing in puffs of dust after a powerful blow. At this point, the system reports the completion of the mission, destroy debris for quarters, mission accomplished. Gutchin sighs a sigh of relief and notes that everything was on the verge of failure. A concerned girl runs up to him and calls another student by his name. Gojin will call him that from now on. The girl comes closer and asks if Gojin is okay. Gutchin, who was injured, looks at the girl silently. She points to the broken wall and claims that the guy was bullying Gojin. The girl reproaches Gyojin for not talking to her much lately and suspects a teenage crisis. Gutchin listens puzzled, not understanding the reason for such concern. The girl takes his hands, noticing that something is wrong with one of them. She is frightened and wonders what's wrong with his hand. Gutchin wants to explain but doesn't know where to start. The girl decides that his opponent has hit him in the arm and offers to just knock the offender out. In a burst of emotion, she starts throwing rocks at her opponent lying on the floor, accusing him. The opponent fearfully denies his guilt, trying to explain himself. Gutchin watches the scene in bewilderment. After what happens, the girl smiles with relief after realizing that everything has turned out okay. She takes the guy's hand and insists they go to the nurse's office. Gutchin tries to stop the girl, but she's persistent. They walk into the nurse's office. Inside, they find the necessary medical supplies to treat wounds. The girl puts Gutchin in a hospital bed and tells him to rest, promising to help if needed. Gutchin lies staring pensively at the ceiling and remains silent. The girl once again asks him to call her if he suddenly feels bad. She walks away and Gutchin is left alone, looking after her. Left alone, the young man ponders. Gutchin ponders the strange changes in his body. He senses that something is wrong, so he decides to check his cha. He feels that all inner strength and energy is mixed and disturbed. Suddenly, the young man began to feel a strange pain. Suddenly, blood spurts out of him. Gutchin wipes away the blood, surprised that his body can't even withstand such a strain. Gutchin's gaze becomes serious and thoughtful. He ponders how he ended up as a Gutchin of the great demon cult. Shows the majestic temple against the backdrop of sunset. A man with long hair watches the sunset from the temple wall. He suddenly turns around as someone approaches him. The cult leader comes outside and asks why he was called in. The old man addresses him by the name Gutchin and asks if he remembers the captured strange man. The young man is surprised and calls the captive a strange type. The old man confirms and says that the man kept making strange claims. According to him, the man claimed he wasn't from here. The young man begins to guess which famous clan the captive is from, but is doubtful by his appearance. The old man clarifies what the man claims: he's from another world altogether. The young man reacts derisively, thinking it's delusional. He laughs, but the old man wonders if the oddities should be dismissed so easily. The old man urges us to think about it more seriously. Transition to the present, Gutchin on the rooftop curses for not asking more questions back then. It torments him that his new body can't handle the internal energy. It's humiliating for someone like him. Gutchin is not content to be in this position. He looks at the city and recognizes this is definitely not the world he lived in with his master before. He notes wistfully, the place is nothing like their familiar world. Lying on the roof, Gutchin reflects on life. He suddenly remembers the reward. Indignantly, he demands his reward. Gutchin shouts to the sky and demands the promised reward. He nervously asks why she hasn't been handed over yet. Gutchin starts wondering how to get his reward and demands it to show up. A glowing scroll with the mission and the inscription, "Mission accomplished, reward received." He begs to be brought back home. Gutchin remembers that he must return to protect what he holds dear. Clenching his fist, he promises himself to protect the things that are important to him. Gutchin is suddenly enveloped by energy. He is surprised. He marvels at the energy he feels, but anticipates something good in it. Gutchin wonders if he's really going to be brought back. On the scroll appears the inscription, "Reward." A pleasant fragrance emanates from the body. A floral scent does begin to waft from Gutchin. He is perplexed. He resents receiving such an absurd gift instead of returning home. Enraged, he punches the scroll and yells, demanding an explanation and a real reward. After a beat, the young man didn't realize where the damn scroll had disappeared to. He continues to call out, addressing the scroll while someone downstairs calls him a loser. The blonde turns to ask Gutchin if he can be quiet for a bit, which surprises him. She says it's too noisy and she has trouble concentrating, then asks if he even rented the place. Gutchin interjects about the lease in confusion, seemingly not understanding what it's about. The girl notes that he's not acting like his usual self right now and wonders if he's sick. Gutchin thinks about it and agrees that maybe there really is something wrong with him. Blondie calls Gutchin a loser and tells him to pull himself together and stop hanging around on the roof. After saying that, Gutchin disappears and the girl chuckles alone. The girl guesses that the reason for everyone's inattention to her is because of Gutchin. A tense pause hangs in the air between Gutchin and the girl. Gutchin moves closer and catches her attention. He ponders why everyone calls him a loser and has no way of understanding the reason. The girl interjected in confusion, surprised by his words. At this time, other kids run onto the roof, creating an unexpected situation. One of the guys, angry and aggressive, announces that he has finally found Gutchin by threatening him. Gutchin at this point is no longer surprised and reacts lazily to the appearance of a familiar opponent. A large guy with a smirk is shown approaching. The tall guy tells Gutchin that he's finally lost his mind and calls him a loser again. Gutchin curiously asks if he's the leader of this company. In response, that guy attacks Gutchin with a swinging attack, hitting him with his arm with a swinging kick. Gutchin is shocked. His body can't react normally. He inwardly notices that he hasn't recovered yet. Gutchin tries to defend, but the striker is coming at him with increasing force. The guy proceeds to beat up Gutchin, furiously accusing and threatening him. In a furious dialogue, he wonders why Gutchin keeps talking at all. The beating continues, with the striker clearly dominating. The girl yells at Gutchin to stay away since she warned him not to come. The striker also encourages Gutchin not to run away. At this moment during the fight, the girl dodges and unexpectedly crashes into Gutchin. As a result, she falls over the fence and is pulled into the net. Her scream of terror rang out. Everyone on the roof is in shock. It turns out they're on the 5th floor of the building, and the guy with the hat is panicking, not knowing what to do. The big guy is stunned by what's happening. Gutchin ponders without much alarm that the girl will be fine. After all, a few floors doesn't look like such a danger to him. The other guy doesn't understand this calmness of Gutchin's, thinking he's crazy. At this moment, a mysterious scroll appears in front of Gutchin, causing him to be surprised. An urgent quest appears on the scroll. He needs to rescue a girl who has fallen through his fault. Gutchin is perplexed as to why he is the one to blame for what happened. Nevertheless, he continues to reason that everything that has happened is not his fault, with some of the guys watching him from the sidelines and not realizing what he is muttering about. The other guy turns to him in a panic, not realizing what he's going to do next. Gutchin jumped off the roof to save the girl, causing shock to those around him. The hero hopes that this time he will get the promised reward, and he is sure of it. In flight, their hands are almost touching. A rescue is about to happen. Gutchin successfully catches Blonde landing with her, destroying the pavement with it. The dazed girl looks at her savior. Saved calls Gutchin a loser, showing his audacity. Gutchin asks if she's hurt, but the girl continues to tease him. The guy realizes that since she's talking, she's fine. The blonde in confusion feels her heart suddenly beating hard. Meanwhile, upstairs, the guys are panicking, not knowing what to do next. One of the high school students silently assesses the situation. He decides they'd better just run away. The other guy hesitantly agrees, calling him by his first name, Dong-ho. Dong-ho is annoyed by this and asks if he wants to take care of the problem himself. Toth makes his decision with his head down. The company quickly leaves, pretending they weren't here at all. Suddenly, something startles them. A high school student freezes in surprise. An ominous energy appears in front of him. He is struck with fear. An inexplicable shiver grips him and he can't move. He is addressed. The bully catches his gaze. Gutchin grudgingly asks where he's going in such a hurry, much to Dong-ho's surprise. He doesn't understand how Gutchin could have survived the fall. Gutchin replies that at least he got a valuable reward for it. A scroll describing the reward for the emergency mission appears. Within 10 seconds, Gutchin will be able to use 1% of his real power. He decides that it is now possible to punish his abusers. By and large, the beating was a success and everyone is already bowing at the feet of our villain. The two seniors are on their knees, hands raised, admitting defeat. Gutchin gets angry and prepares to talk. He asks the sitting guy if he thinks he's a wuss. The guy startled confirms that he previously thought Gutchin was a loser and an outcast. Gutchin insists, but the guy adds something else. He says that Gutchin isn't the same anymore. Gutchin listens and the guy lists, no longer a wimp, no longer a loser, no longer an outcast. The guy calls himself worthless garbage in front of Gutchin. Gutchin is surprised by this treatment and is about to punch him. The guy begs him not to. Gutchin complains about the injustice and is sad. In that moment, he realizes that, even if only a little, he has gained power. He becomes convinced that this was his strength. No one in this world can duplicate his presence yet. Yes, that was definitely his power. Gutchin thinks that returning to his old place might not be such a fantasy. He ponders who this guy is with his magical powers. Gutchin notes that no matter how much he looks around, the place seems strange. He turns his attention to the girls, marveling that they are wearing very short clothes. He is also surprised by the guys. Their appearance is questionable. Gutchin concludes that this world is full of weirdness. He wonders why the people around him are whispering and if there might be something wrong with his face. And being carried like a king, that's okay, right? One of the students chuckles, hinting that what's really weird is that Gutchin just rides them. Gutchin indifferently clarifies why not. He recalls how he used to ride in public a lot and suspects the locals want the same thing. Curly says with surprise that there was definitely no such thing. The guys look around. The whole situation seems ridiculous to them. Gutchin decides, after much thought, that he is hungry. He then announces that it's time to go to a Chinese restaurant to get something to eat. Dong-ho clarifies with defeat, are they really going to a Chinese restaurant? The friends are already seated at the table, each with their own tray. Gutchin enthusiastically stuffs his mouth with food. Dong-ho notices that Gutchin eats a lot and with appetite. Gutchin admires the school for its excellent food. Curly notes that in terms of food, this school is just tops, and Gutchin asks a classmate why he doesn't eat. The guy embarrassedly replies that of course he's eating, but the step hero is already taking his tray of food away. He smiles crookedly as he watches Gutchin quickly empty the tray. Soon someone unknown shows up. The new character says something about loser with a smirk. A group of new guys enter the room, clearly unhappy about something. One of them is outraged at what's going on. Dong-ho is startled, trying to explain himself. Dong-ho realizes to himself that the situation is bad. Gutchin coldly continues to eat despite what's happening. One of the new guys, apparently the leader, gives everyone a stern look. Gutchin is perplexed as he continues to eat. The bully scolds, realizing that the rumors have turned out to be true. The new guy accuses the others of really carrying Gutchin around like a king. Curly begins to excuse himself, laughing nervously. The group of newcomers laughs, offering Sangu a ride on their shoulders as well. The leader jokingly offers to show off his Lamborghini. Gutchin doesn't understand what Lambo means, surprisingly interjects. The leader demands that Gutchin go up to the roof of the school. Sangu teases, asking if the young man is scared. Gutchin remains at the table, silently finishing his lunch while the others leave. Gutchin puffed up his cheeks, clearly holding back irritation or resentment. The young man turns to Sangu, reminding him that you can't interfere with a person while they're eating. Even a dog understands that. Sangu turns around with a surprised face, perplexed as to what's going on. He swears in anger and threatens that he could kill right here and now. Gutchin becomes furious, his eyes flashing red. He sighs heavily. Gutchin congratulates someone at the table, and the people at the table don't understand what it's about. He informs the two that they are now expelled, and they wonder why this is happening. Gutchin explains that he's found new slaves for himself, so the old ones are being kicked out. On the rooftop, two groups of students are facing each other. A tense moment. But it seems that only our hero doesn't take this situation seriously. But here's Sangu looking grim, clearly determined to be intransigent. One student asks if they ate something weird today. Another thinks the situation is awkward. The red-eyed Gutchin pretends not to understand what's going on, hinting at someone else's food. One of the guys nervously explains to Gutchin that Sangu's gang is considered elite, a real power different from their company. Gutchin doesn't pay much attention to those words, gesturing that he understood everything. Gutchin reflects that he wants to make sure of one thing: his opponents are really not the usual bullies. Gutchin gets a mission to cleanse the world of garbage too. If he cleans up 4 of them, he gets the universal cure: failure is death. Gutchin gladly accepts this challenge and confirms that his thoughts are correct. He mentally notes that all preparations are complete and now he will tame the new pawns. The demonic-looking Gutchin decides to start taming his new subordinates. One of the students notices that it is suddenly cloudy and wonders about the change in the weather, and then realizes something's wrong. Opponents are surprised that Gutchin is going to them. They think he's lost his mind. One of the guys in Sangu's gang becomes outraged and prepares for a confrontation. This guy with a smirk is going to show off his boxing skills that the champ taught him. He's already trying to intimidate Gutchin, believing that he can't handle him. The little boxer says he can't even handle himself and suggests that his opponents stop his antics. The guy thinks Gutchin is scared and can't even respond. While this clown tries to intimidate Gutchin, he in turn stands still and doesn't react in any way. Gutchin creates heavy pressure as if with an aura, causing fear in his opponent. The guy from Sangu's gang tenses up because he realizes the situation has changed. Boxer senses something unusual, as if something has gone differently than he expected. A dark-haired young man, obviously Gutchin, appears in the flashbacks, who is criticized by someone for being sloppy during practice. Gutchin is surprised by the teacher's remark in the past. The educator repeats with a disgruntled look that the student was careless and punished him. The old man reminds the student to listen carefully, for this is the final instruction. The foundation of attack and defense is footwork. The master states that the essence of any fight is footwork, and whoever wants to be a skillful fighter must master it perfectly. He explains that most fighters use footwork only for evasion and distance control, but true masters use it to limit their opponent's movements. Grandpa also adds that this way you can immediately take a convenient position to attack, and if you do not know it, the battle will not win. Gutchin, remembering the master's instructions, clearly begins to put them into practice, his attitude serious. Gutchin, with burning red eyes, is suddenly behind the frightened guy. Gutchin's attack stuns his opponent, who doesn't even have time to realize what's happening. Gutchin accuses his opponent of not even having mastered the basics and strikes. His hard punch knocks his opponent to the ground. The others around them start backing away in horror, seeing what has happened. Gutchin calmly watches them, leaving the 3 at a loss. He asks if everyone understands everything, and the witnesses to his power are amazed at what they see. The 3 guys assess the situation in silence, whispering nervously. Gutchin smirked, rebuking them for always attacking one at a time. He suggests that everyone attack him at the same time, shouting a challenge. The boys make up their minds and rush at him with a shout. Gutchin masterfully fends off all their attacks and strikes back. One of the opponents is left questioning whether to keep fighting. Gutchin instantly finds himself face to face with his attacker. Sangu asks in horror who he is. In response, Gutchin smiles ominously. God, doesn't the bully realize who he's dealing with yet? The red-eyed Gutchin calls himself a representative of the supreme demon cult. Realizing that he is finished, Sangu asks the young man to stop. Gutchin's punch was so powerful that the ground shook and a powerful shockwave appeared. The other guys are shocked at what's happening, can't even open their eyes. After the fight, the defeated man lies unconscious on the floor and Gutchin looks up at him. Gutchin ponders whether to check the status of the new pawn now. He decides to check the reward for the mission by opening the interface from the screen. A mission accomplishment and reward message appears on the scroll: Universal Restoration Grass. Gutchin sees grass appearing in front of him. He is surprised by the versatility of the award and is glad it was better than he expected. He wakes Sangu up, scolding him for exaggerating and saying he didn't even use martial arts. The defeated man complains of pain, and eyewitnesses are shocked by what they see. The atmosphere shifts to the school hallway, where the students look around in surprise. The students whisper as they discuss what is happening. Gutchin sits on Sangu's shoulders as he walks past the startled bystanders. He gathers his attention around and says he's looking for something important. Defeated asks with a swollen face what exactly Gutchin is looking for. Gutchin replies that he's looking for traces of the demon cult. He is misunderstood, asking what it's about. Gutchin irritably orders him to walk straight, pressing down on his subordinate's shoulders and punching him. The defeated man is angry but submits. Gutchin mused aloud, remembering what sects existed besides the demon cult. He angrily accuses a subordinate of not knowing anything. The defeated man suddenly has an epiphany. Gutchin asks with a sneer, what helps thinking? Beating. The defeated man panics as he recalls the information he needs. The defeated man recalls Jongnam's first sword. Gutchin suspiciously interjects what the man just said. Gutchin waits relaxedly at her desk, preparing for something. He informs himself that the bell has rung and recalls the words of his interlocutor. According to what I heard, something must happen after the third bell. Someone shows up at the entrance after the bell rings. Gutchin notices with a serious look that the one he was waiting for has arrived. He mentally utters, the best sword of Jongnam. A teacher named Park Jongnam walks into the classroom with a bamboo stick on his shoulder. The teacher walks past the students, making the young man wary. Park Jongnam sternly tells everyone to open their textbooks. He adds that something bad might happen otherwise and introduces himself as a high school Korean teacher. Students sit in the classroom while Park Jongnam stands at the blackboard. The main character is red-eyed, looks excited, and his eyes seem to be blazing with fire. The teacher ignores Gutchin's anger, and the other students are worried about his reaction. Gutchin is sure he suspected this development and mentally sneers at someone else's abilities. At the same time, in another classroom, one of the students is getting uncomfortable. Gutchin relaxes, realizing that he expected too much, and thinks about the other martial artists. He reflects that he would sense the presence of another fighter by their energy. Gutchin doesn't understand what is wanted of him, for he is sure of his uniqueness. At this point, some sort of threat taunts him. Gutchin reacts quickly, gesturing away from the unexpected attack. He instantly jumps up and yells about the ambush. Gutchin is furious, demanding to know who staged the attack, and his classmates are dumbfounded by his behavior. The teacher is perplexed as to why Gutchin is acting like this and asks if he's gone crazy. Park Jongnam calls Gutchin to the board. Gutchin guesses who exactly set the trap. But then Gutchin realizes that he can't even catch even a basic object like before. He's annoyed with his new physical form. The teacher again demands that Gutchin come to the blackboard, wondering at his condition. Gutchin is angry and perplexed. Suddenly, he looked at the teacher. The teacher is dumbfounded by his student's behavior. Gutchin looks at the teacher with a fierce gaze. The teacher watches him, not realizing what's going on. The young man eventually sighs, realizing what is to come. Gutchin is disappointed and looks at the teacher through the force. He clenches his fists and walks to the board, getting angrier and angrier. The young man seemed to be on his way to the teacher, but Gutchin only passed by. It surprised the teacher, like, what's going on here? Still, it was starting to piss Jongnam off. He stopped the young man with his bamboo pointer, which started to anger Gutchin. He doesn't understand what his student is doing. Park Jongnam resents why the student is going to leave before the end of class. The teacher speaks reproachfully about the children's lack of respect for teachers. Gutchin mutters irritably in response. He addresses the teacher, calling him the great sword of Jongnam, but finds him weak. The teacher is stunned by Gutchin's defiant behavior. Park Jongnam menacingly asks Gutchin how he got this information. The students whisper and the teacher demands an explanation of what Gutchin meant. Park Jongnam asks the students to do independent work. He then demands that Gutchin come through with him. Gutchin ends up with the teacher on our favorite rooftop. It's time to open an office here. Gutchin is unhappy that he always gets called in when something strange happens. The teacher gets angry, he gets annoyed, he continues to hold the stick. The young man asks the teacher if he is really from Jongnam. He doesn't realize if that's really the case. Gutchin gets angry and wonders why Jongnam would send him. Park Jingyam is surprised that the student has been speaking disparagingly to him all this time and asks if he wants real trouble. Gutchin is puzzled, thinking Park Jingyam is a weakling and doesn't understand what he's saying. Park Jingyam demands to be answered. Gutchin stares silently and inwardly ignores the call. Teacher Park Jingyam laughs, noting that Gutchin doesn't even answer him. Gutchin is surprised by Park Jingyam's behavior and doesn't understand the reason for laughing. The teacher starts laughing even louder. Gutchin picks up on the laughter. Park Jingyam laughs back even more ridiculously. The teacher swings the stick with a shout. Park Jingyam decides not to hit Gutchin on the head since the latter still has to learn. He throws a punch, but not to the head. There's a bright flash from the impact. The teacher is shocked by what happened. The young man calmly catches the stick with his hand, energy appearing all around. Gutchin looks at the teacher eye to eye. Park Jingyam feels the tension. He's shocked the guy didn't even blink. Park Jongnam realizes that the student in front of him is no ordinary student. The teacher mentally realizes that he might die. Park Jingyam instinctively attacks but also fears for his life. At this point, he regrets what happened. Gutchin coldly remains calm. Park Jingyam realizes in a panic that he attacked an ordinary student. Suddenly, the young man calls out to Park Jongnam to stop. A strange energy appears. Gutchin senses that another martial artist is nearby. At this time, a fight breaks out on the roof. Park Jingyam jumps back and Gutchin counters with a counter. Gutchin watches the teacher carefully. He looks at his hand, feeling his body react strangely. Gutchin is angry at her physical condition. He regrets not hitting his opponent in the face. The teacher, on the other hand, is at a loss for what is happening. Park Jingyam guesses that Gutchin is also a fighter. It surprises him that someone would almost use martial arts in front of an assassin from the shadows. Park Jingyam ponders that Gutchin always seemed quiet. Did he really hide it all? The teacher is lost in speculation. Either Gutchin is sick or just plain weird. He is perplexed as to what is even going on and calls the student a wimp. Gutchin asks why they're looking at him like that. Park Jingyam realizes that he's being looked down upon. Gutchin pretends not to hear and asks to repeat the question. Park Jingyam is incandescent. His desire to deal with his student drastically flares up. He tries to calm down and decide whether to confirm his suspicions. Park Jingyam calls Gyojin's name to draw attention to himself. The teacher admits to being shocked that the young man is a martial artist. He cautions him not to use his skills so recklessly. Gutchin doesn't understand the trouble the teacher is talking about. The protagonist warns that real trouble awaits whoever confronts him. Park Jingyam tries to justify himself by citing his position as a teacher and asks to talk. But the young man stiffly states that their conflict cannot be resolved with words. Gutchin reacts to the situation with surprise and wariness, his red eyes expressing bewilderment. Park Jingyam clutches the bamboo stick tightly in his hand, preparing for action. It shows his strength and confidence. The stick seems to be enveloped in energy. Our hero gets into a fighting stance in front of Park Jongnam, intending to test his strength. Gutchin decides to see for himself what his opponent's abilities are. Park Jingyam regrets that no teacher would let his student go astray. The man warns the student that this is his last warning. The teacher tells him not to be talked down to. His expression turns menacing. On the rooftop of the school, Park Jingyam and Gutchin are facing each other, preparing for a fight. The young man asks what happens if he responds to a challenge in this way. The situation becomes tense, the rivals silently sizing each other up. Park Jingyam believes that the student has crossed a line beyond which it is no longer possible to return. He declares that he will now discipline the student with all his might. With a wave of his stick, Park Jingyam starts the fight. The teacher attacks lightning fast, his speed and strength evident. He continues the offensive, flashing his stick, the enemy barely having time to react. Park Jongnam's punches come powerfully from the top, creating a dangerous situation for the hero. Gutchin parries the attack. His agility and technique are just as good. The young man's gaze becomes focused and aggressive. Teacher swings at Gutchin with renewed vigor. The fight heats up. The whirlwind from the blow shows all the energy put into the fight. The opponents do not yield to each other. The young man confidently fends off the attack, staying in place. Gutchin backs away and assesses the situation, keeping his distance. Park Jin-yeom prepares to launch another attack, not letting his opponent relax. Gutchin notices a mop next to the wall and decides to use it. He quickly grabs a mop. He has an instant plan in his head. Mop flies up top. Gutchin is controlling the situation on the battlefield by surprise. The mop was in the air, or rather now it was a weapon. Park Jin-yeom sees Gutchin using the mop, lifting it into the air. What to do now? The young man aims for the mop. Now he has a chance. Gutchin continues to attack with a shout, "Where is the teacher looking?" Park Jin-yeom gets distracted by a mop and lands a surprise punch from Gutchin. Gutchin is pressing down on the ground, preventing Park Jin-yeom from recovering. Park Jin-yeom realizes how dangerous it is to be distracted even for a moment during a fight. He marvels at Gutchin's skill level for his age. Park Jin-yeom realizes that Gutchin must have trained a lot in secret. He mentally notes that such a result only happens with great dedication and hard work. Park Jin-yeom inwardly admires his opponent, recognizing the achievement. Gutchin is perplexed as to why Park Jin-yeom looks so strange and joyful in the background of the fight. The young man notices that the teacher is smiling to himself, as if he's up to something. Park Jin-yeom advises his opponent to start getting nervous and mentions the legendary 36-sword Junani technique. Gutchin shows interest and surprise at what he hears. He confidently gets into a fighting stance with the mop. Gutchin explains that since he was a child, he had a habit that he constantly tried to correct, deeming it unsuccessful. The teacher is surprised by Gutchin's behavior and actions, not understanding his intent. Gutchin tells us that whenever he defeated the underdog, he always did it a certain way without listening to anyone's advice. The young man decides to show a real version of the legendary 36 swords of Jongnam technique. Park Jin-yeom is shocked and exclaims in surprise when he sees his student's unusual reaction. He admits that this isn't the first time Gutchin has struck him. He notes to himself with a smile that he hasn't felt such a rush of excitement from a fight in a long time. A bird watches everything from above while the two fighters on the roof continue their confrontation. A bird circles over the roof of the school, dropping its feathers menacingly, the wind increasing all around. Gutchin and Park Jin-yeom rush at each other with great speed, unleashing all their power. Both claim the legendary technique, the 36 Swords of Peace. Their blows collide, releasing a powerful wave of energy. Gutchin and Park Jin-yeom's faces are contorted with malicious delight. Their battle is making them feel good. Gutchin strikes hard with a piece of mop, sparkling with blue light. However, Park Jin-yeom blocks the attack and looks on in surprise at his opponent. Park Jin-yeom is stunned. He can't believe the attack was stopped. There is a flash on the roof, a devastating shockwave spreads and a column of smoke forms. The silhouettes of standing and sitting people become visible in the puffs of smoke. Park Jin-yeom, clad in a blue shirt, sits defeatedly on the floor amidst the haze. A man in a strict suit and carrying a katana approaches them, deftly grabbing the young man's arm. Park Jin-yeom recognizes the shadow killer with horror. Gutchin, infuriated by the interference, demands an explanation. The person in the suit looks at them with a cold stare through the smoke. The stranger's face shows through under the smoke. He's clearly not happy. All three are now together in the center of a vortex of smoke. The situation is tense. The mysterious man's face is half covered by his hair. He's watching intently. Park Jin-yeom is shocked. He realizes who's in front of him and asks if the man has become a shadowy assassin. The mysterious stranger briefly responds with silence. Gutchin, clutching on, is angry and demands to be let go. He's perplexed as to why this man is lashing out at him and gets even angrier. Gutchin drops his opponent in one deft move, throwing him back against the wall. The stranger quickly comes to his senses and reacts to Gutchin's lunge with disdain. Gutchin expresses obvious annoyance and prepares for another skirmish. The stranger accuses Gutchin. He broke the laws of the martial union and used martial arts without authorization. On the floor lies a shattered wooden weapon, the aftermath of their battle. The stranger declares those who violate the laws of martial arts will be severely punished. Gutchin is outraged, saying he doesn't understand what holiness we're talking about. Gutchin pretends he doesn't care about anything so much that the world has gone completely insane. The stranger interjected in confusion, "What?" Next, he accuses Gutchin of using force against the common man and being insolent. Everyone hears the retort, "Who do you consider civil?" and is perplexed. Gutchin points to Park Jingyam. Does he really look like an ordinary civilian? Gutchin scoffs, calling his opponent's style weak for true martial arts. He screams that the other guy has terrible standards and real martial arts is not for people like him. The stranger coldly states only the Alliance will make decisions and now turns to Gutchin. A stranger with red eyes explains what a shadow killer is. Gutchin begins to scoff. He doesn't know who the shadow assassins are and sarcastically wonders if the job pays well. The teacher sighs heavily at what is happening. The stranger begins to explain at length who the shadow assassins are. He says their mission is to prevent the unwise use of martial arts, to keep order, and to protect civilians. He assures that the shadow assassins are the shield of the Mirim world. But the young man says the shield is his ass and he'll smear the stranger with his ass. He is outraged. There are such people with a twisted sense of justice everywhere. Gutchin threateningly exclaims that today will destroy his justice. Park Jingyam is horrified and asks everyone to stop and figure it out. The teacher calmly suggests that there has probably been a misunderstanding. Park Jingyam is embarrassed to note that what happened hardly qualifies as real martial arts. He agrees to let the union judge and begins to ask the stranger to make an exception. The stranger hesitates to comply with the request, explaining that he is simply doing his duty. Park Jingyam nervously notes that shadow assassins have a role to play, but really begs to make an exception for once. The same one abruptly refuses and is going to take that annoying young man away. Park Jingyam desperately cries out that it's his student in front of him. Park Jingyam reiterates that it is his student that he is protecting. Gutchin irritably denies his discipleship, thinking Park Jingyam's words are nonsense and swearing at him. The stranger wonders if Park Jingyam really took Gutchin as his apprentice. The hero is dumbfounded by the question and doubts whether he is really Park Jongnam's disciple. The young man was displeased with what was happening, but his mouth was immediately covered. Park Jingyam abruptly changes his tone, recognizes Gutchin as a student, and excuses his poor martial arts skills. Park Jingyam continues to make excuses for the young man, urging him to understand the situation for the first time. The stranger is silent in thought. Park Jingyam thinks that the young man is just starting to develop, and if he is taken into the Alliance, he could be destroyed before he can reach his potential. He explains that Gutchin could be labeled dangerous and broken, even if he doesn't blame the Alliance. Park Jingyam doesn't want his student's future to be ruined because of his mistakes, asking for mercy for the boy. Park Jingyam guesses that it's no coincidence that a shadowy assassin was responsible here, perhaps it's fate. Guy ironically asks if Park Jingyam really still believes in such superstitions. Park Jingyam doesn't know what to say to that and remains silent. The stranger gestures that he's giving in, which surprises Park Jongnam. The teacher is relieved to thank the one for the solution. The stranger remarks that even in the morning he felt a strong presence nearby. He guesses it was Gutchin. The guy sternly warns that he's making an exception for the last time and it won't happen again. Park Jingyam thanks him, even though she's very worried. He thanks the stranger once more as he leaves, calling him a shadowy assassin. Park Jingyam promises that something like this won't happen again. He sighs heavily as he stands with Gukong. The hero would like to bite the teacher, but the teacher was falling to the floor without strength. Park Jingyam lies on the roof with no strength, and the young man looks up at him. Gutchin was surprised that that guy was unrealistically strong. Park Jingyam suggests we talk seriously. Collectively, they move to the edge of the roof to talk. Park Jingyam reminds the hero not to use martial arts without permission, and that just pisses Gutchin off. He resents why he is forbidden to use force and have such rules imposed on him. Park Jingyum explains that times have changed and now you can't survive by brute force alone. The young man believes that those around him are being unfair and Park Jingyum is annoyed by his lack of understanding. The teacher wonders why Gutchin is acting on top of him. The young man falls on his back and expresses his displeasure. Park Jingyum sighs again and says he doesn't want to continue the conversation any further. The young man, lying on the roof, concludes that he has actually ended up in a very strange place, but he doesn't realize what this place is. Gutchin ponders aloud that since there are martial arts here, it means the demon clan also exists somewhere. Suddenly, the young man quickly remembers something important. He wants to ask Park Jongnam if the demon clan is here, but notices that the latter has disappeared. The hero is surprised by Park Jongnam's absence as he walks back into the building. The young man hangs down and asks loudly where the man is going. Park Jingyum explains that, unlike a student, he can't skip because he's a teacher. He asks to postpone the conversation until after school and tells Gutchin to go to class. The young man wonders if lessons are really more important now than all their odd jobs. The teacher thinks that lessons are nothing to Gutchin, but to him, although annoying, they are very important. He confirms that the lessons are really important to him, despite the irritation. Gutchin, smiling, says goodbye to his teacher Park Jingyum and walks away, and the latter just silently waves back. Gutchin, hanging from the parapet, screams for an explanation, not understanding what he should do now. But the door had already slammed shut in front of the young man's nose. He falls to the roof, shrieking loudly in surprise. Park Jingyum sighs heavily, feeling tired. The teacher admits to himself that he too is trying to make sense of the situation. A strange glowing scroll written in an unknown language suddenly appears in front of Gutchin. The young man looks at the scroll in surprise and tries to figure out what it is. Soon the roof was finally empty. Gutchin stands with a look of confidence, arms crossed over his chest, against a backdrop of ominous red. One of the students looks back at Gutchin fearfully, feeling his pressure. Gutchin maintains a serious expression on his face as if he has no intention of relenting. The classmates discuss among themselves that they shouldn't interfere or they'll get in trouble. Gutchin, with a dejected look, thinks he's terribly bored. He stares forward intently, boredom and irritation evident in his eyes. Gutchin looks at the magical glowing scroll that appeared in his hands. It says on the scroll that it's a special assignment, but he can only continue it after completing the previous one, currently 30% completed. The classmates marvel at the strange expression on Gutchin's face. Sunlight fills the study through the blinds by the window. Gutchin sleeps on the desk, drooling. Teacher Park Jingyum approaches Gutchin with a stick and sees that he is completely exhausted. The teacher tries to wake Gutchin up, saying that they need to talk. Gutchin suddenly wakes up with a strange face, not realizing what's going on. Park Jingyum is distraught, surprised at his student's condition. The teacher is amazed at how soundly Gutchin slept, almost like he was unconscious. He wonders if this is the same guy who was almost carried off by the shadow killer because he looks completely different now. The teacher and Gutchin are having a conversation while alone in a half-empty classroom. After a short nap, Gutchin becomes more collected and calm. Gutchin notes that his head is clearer after sleeping and he remembers all the weird things that have happened recently. He recalls how he once called his name out loud and the words disappeared into thin air. Gutchin thinks about how the cult leader always mentored him. The advice of the cult leader arises in his mind: don't act recklessly. He curses the trap of a cunning adversary, realizing that he can't speak openly about his true identity. Park Jingyum asks Gutchin something while standing in front of him. The teacher wonders if Gutchin is listening to him at all, and he suddenly realizes that he's distracted. Gutchin grabs his head and complains of severe pain, explaining that he hit his head today. He keeps complaining that's why he has such bad memories. The teacher looks puzzled, trying to figure out what's going on. Gutchin theatrically holds his head, feigning anguish. The teacher watches Gutchin, who is lying on the floor, acting out his painful condition. Gutchin jumps up, exaggerating the effects of his injury. He shakes it off, inwardly annoyed that the teacher had grasped the situation so quickly. Park Jin-yum interjects, wondering if Gutchin doesn't remember anything because of the punch. The teacher is happy to have guessed the reason for Gutchin's strange behavior and thinks it's quite possible. Park Jin-yum explains that students sometimes have to go through a lot, but as a teacher, he cannot ignore their suffering. The teacher says that he'll help Gutchin through his difficulties, but Gutchin only blinks perplexedly. Gutchin himself ponders how simple or naive his teacher is, but decides to take advantage of it. Gutchin asks the teacher if there's a demon cult here, but the teacher interjects in surprise. Park Jin-yum suspiciously wonders why Gutchin is suddenly asking about this. Gutchin is inwardly frightened. He's not sure if he's overreacting to the cult question himself. The teacher honestly replies that he himself is not sure. The young man freezes, waiting for an answer. He can't take it anymore. The teacher adds that probably ... but then he says that there is no demonic cult. This news made Gutchin pale. Park Jin-yum says that the demonic cult was destroyed a long time ago, and it is now gone. Gutchin, trying to justify himself, explains that he asked just in case there are other dangers around. At that moment, something happens outside the door. Someone enters the classroom. A girl enters, greeting Gutchin cheerfully and asking if he was expecting her. Gutchin notices the girl and tries to remember who she is. And then he remembers this girl in the nurse's office. She greets the teacher, and Park Jin-yum tries to remember her name. The girl introduces herself as Kim Min-jong from 3rd grade, and the teacher supposedly remembers her. The teacher asks if Kim Min-jong is going home with Gyojin. The girl happily confirms the man's words. Park Jin-yum lets them go home, and Gutchin is surprised. The teacher says goodbye to everyone, and Gutchin is perplexed. The young man panics and yells out to wait. He disagrees. Park Jin-yum talks about continuing the conversation tomorrow and leaves, sighing in relief that everything is settled. Evening begins. The sun sets behind the city buildings. Gutchin and Min-jong walk down the street together, and she chats enthusiastically. Gutchin notes that if the demonic cult still existed, it wouldn't be so peaceful here. Gutchin sighs heavily. He thinks about what's going on and looks surprised. Min-jong is surprised that Gutchin suddenly stops, and the young man asks her where she's going. She says she's going home, our home, clarifying the answer. Gutchin interjects in surprise about their house. Gutchin asks in confusion if they are really living together. Min-jong replies that they have been together for over 3 years. Gutchin is taken aback but pretends to be aware of it. Min-jong suggests a quicker walk home and informs them that Daddy is going to cook something delicious tonight. Gutchin is impatiently thinking of something delicious. He doesn't believe it could happen. The young man declares that he has eaten almost nothing today and decides to eat first and think about the rest later. He cheerfully calls Min-jong to go home together. But suddenly, the young man stopped. Min-jun, turning around, asks if something is wrong with Gyojin. Suddenly, he grabs her wrist. Min-jong is worried and asks if the young man is really that hungry. She yells that she won't take food from him and that they've gone the wrong way, and Gyojin pulls her along. At this moment, Gutchin senses danger, his eyes burning red. He is inwardly surprised and tries to understand what is going on around him. Mysterious people appear on the streets, chasing Gutchin and Min-jong. The heroes find themselves at a standstill, tensely looking around the sky. Gutchin is silent, breathing heavily. Min-jong turns to Gyojin in alarm. The enemies are approaching, watching the two guys from above. One of the enemies clarifies if his comrade is sure that this is the right person. The white-haired man is convinced he's hurt himself and is sure he's right. They believe Gutchin noticed the surveillance, but he was unlucky enough to get caught in a dead end. They call him a kid and say he had a good sniff but little luck. One of the enemies is surprised by Gyojin's disappearance, for he vanished in the blink of an eye. Min-jong lies unconscious on the ground, her rivals lost in speculation as to whether Gutchin has abandoned her. The pursuers run to find Gutchin, sure that he is not far away. Suddenly, Gutchin appears, attacking the white-haired guy. Gutchin looks intimidating, I think someone is about to be unhappy. The enemy is stunned and frightened upon seeing the angry Gutchin. A thunderstorm breaks out, and Gutchin attacks the enemy with fury. Gutchin cold-bloodedly smashes his opponents with a furious attack. The pursuers react with horror at what is happening, having realized the danger. Their faces are full of terror. They did not expect to face such a force. The young man attacks his enemies, shouting that today they will all die. A little earlier, Mijin irritably rebukes Gutchin for forgetting where their house is again. Mijin calls out to Gutchin and offers to walk home together. Mijin walks ahead, and Gutchin pensively follows her down the alley. Gutchin watches Mijin and is surprised by her behavior. In that case, the young man decides to knock the girl out for the time being to get some rest. Gutchin sighed heavily, contemplating what he would have to say later. There was a massive explosion in the alley, clouds of dust rising between the buildings. In a cloud of dust is a man in black clothes and a mask, looking badly wounded. Gutchin, hanging from the wires, appears in front of another masked fighter, preparing for further action. A wave of punches rushes down the pipe. Gutchin is clearly using the force. The masked fighter with red hair snaps out of his seat and lunges at Gutchin, screaming in anger. The attacker makes a swift leap forward in an attempt to attack the opponent. The fighter notices that Gutchin has suddenly disappeared and doesn't realize where he went. Later, he notices that Gutchin is upstairs, not immediately believing his eyes. The red-haired opponent is dumbfounded at how quickly Gutchin moved. Gutchin on top with an intimidating look and clenched fist. He is clearly preparing a powerful punch. He releases destructive energy from his fist, his eyes glowing red. Another opponent with a sword pounces on Gutchin. The enemy raises his sword to repel the hero's attack. The surprised fighter realizes that he can't understand how Gutchin moves like that. Gutchin falls downward from a height with a deafening force, creating an explosion of energy. A female opponent with long red hair looks anxiously at what is happening. The redhead notices that Gutchin is showing incredible strength and watches him warily. Gutchin questions his opponent about how he dared to follow him around. He asks the attackers if they have prepared for the possible consequences of their attack. The woman suggests retreating, for the enemy is far more dangerous than they thought. The red-haired partner is surprised. He doesn't understand why it's necessary to retreat. In response to her partner's doubts, the woman explains that the situation is more dangerous than it seems. Gutchin shows confidence and an intimidating smile, emphasizing the danger of the moment. The red-haired partner reacts nervously to the danger, waving away his fear. The team commander reminds the team of discipline, stating that quarreling with teammates is not to be tolerated. A woman is concerned about her partner's condition and asks if he is okay. The enemy looks threatening with his lips pressed together. He explains that he only let his guard down for a second, and they begin to mock him by bringing up the mistake. A man gets angry and calls the person he's talking to angry. He goes on to say that everyone should get ready to fight. The man orders everyone to draw their weapons and prepare for battle. The redhead is surprised and asks if he means it. The commander repeats that he was inattentive for only a moment, but assures there is nothing to worry about. He's confident that if he doesn't make any more mistakes like that, he'll be fine. A young man standing on the wires appears and says that in his day such excuses would have resulted in death. Gutchin, with glowing red eyes, continues that they would kill immediately for such mistakes and demands to remember that. The man clenches his teeth and remains silent, stunned. He reflects to himself that even from his leader he never received such advice, and now he hears it from some upstart. He accuses the young man of being cocky, explaining, "It means to be defiant and disrespectful." The man believes that it is not only the insolence of the interlocutor that can die here. He promises to finish Gutchin off with one punch without causing any pain. The girl and the red-haired guy pull out their swords and prepare for battle. Gutchin scoffs and says the enemy will be on the ground, urging him to end the conversation and engage. Gutchin is showing his strengths, and one realizes he has potential. Several masked opponents watch warily, their gaze full of tension. Gutchin remains calm and determined. He feels his body not moving and realizes that it is even weaker than he thought. He He realizes that after he defeats one enemy, the others do not retreat, contrary to his expectations. He is surprised. His opponents also turn out to be martial arts masters. Gutchin is mentally outraged, asking a certain trickster to appear, for he is on the verge of death. He assumes the trickster wants something from him too, since he brought him here, and demands the appearance of the rest of the enemies. Opponents make an attempt to attack Gutchin as they prepare to engage. The commander understands it's about to be decided. He thinks he's being mocked and thinks Gutchin is in trouble. He tries to assure everyone that Gutchin is all contrived, that the empty cart rattles the loudest. Gutchin says that if it's all a bluff, why are the others getting so worked up? Gutchin is worried about the appearance of the enemies, begging the trickster to appear. One of the enemies rushes to attack, drawing his sword over Gutchin. The young man manages to dodge, showing a quick reaction. The commander strikes hard. The commander realizes that the young man's reaction has slowed considerably, and so now is his chance. Everyone rushes at our hero, but the commander orders not to kill Gutchin, but to bring him to the brink of death. Gutchin decides to fight without looking back, not thinking about the consequences to his body. Gutchin tells the enemy that he was giving him a chance. Gutchin activates a point on his chest and a flash of energy runs through his body. It would seem that the girl was finished. But the red-haired guy decides to follow through on his own, and the girl asks him to stop. Gutchin pronounces that it's too late to change anything now. The young man grabs the fighter by the arm, and he begins to scream furiously. Gutchin took and ripped off his opponent's arm under the blood moon. The commander was shocked, not believing his eyes. Gutchin, who laughed and said that it was all just a bluff of the enemies. One of his opponents flies back, screaming in pain, but Gutchin stands tall. The enemy curses and complains about the severed arm, and Gutchin notes that enemies only understand strength. The redhead squirms in pain on the ground. The young man only throws the severed arm to that guy, telling him not to forget anything. The enemy in a rage threatens to kill Gutchin. Gutchin ponders that he shouldn't have torn his arm off. He thinks it would be more appropriate to rip out the tongue of the enemy rather than just tearing off the arm. Gutchin ponders to himself that he has pushed the force past a certain point, and now his body is on the verge of collapsing. He doesn't think the body will last very long at all. He decides it's all or nothing from here on out. Gutchin threatens to take all of his opponents with him so he doesn't have to die alone. At this point, a loud bang or bang is heard. Gutchin jumps back, intending to keep the fight on the feet. The enemy clings to life, dragging himself across the ground, while the young man calls for his enemies to come to him. Gutchin, bleeding and with a crazy smile, calls out to the enemy to meet his cult leader. A chain whistles through the air, wrapping around the space. The chain grabs Gutchin. He's at a loss as to what's going on. One of the opponents with a chain wonders if everyone else is okay. The red-haired girl panics and demands backup be called because it's getting too dangerous. The opposing captain hesitates and doesn't know whether to call for help. At this point, the attack is interrupted. Something happens very quickly. Gutchin is suddenly attacked in a chain, right against the red sky. A powerful beam of energy rains down on the earth. Someone shouts for the captain and indignantly demands an explanation from the striker while the young man tries to deal with the onslaught. Transferring to Chonmu School, which seems to be an ordinary educational organization. However, among martial artists, it is an elite school that trains future heirs of the clans. The institution is unique. It's hard to get in here without an influential family. The same girl in the alley, walking through the schoolyard among other students. She tells me that she got in thanks to a scholarship. She didn't notice anything special about the martial arts school, except for one thing. The meaning of strength has changed over time, fighting skills and honor used to be valued, but now strength is power. Now the real power is to be stronger than others. In just half a day, she had felt her position without power. To the others, she was just a stranger, not belonging to any group. She often sat alone in class, feeling isolated. To survive, she tried to be inconspicuous and never disturb those around her. Gradually, she became more observant than the others. Her intuition was sharpened by constant caution. The girl endured until graduation came. Through perseverance, she got into a good university. There was an important meeting on graduation day. She met the team leader for the first time. She was assigned to a group doing dirty work. She became part of the weakest team, the 7th. She wondered why after all this time she was running dubious errands. It would be beautiful to think that this is how she helps her family, but really ... It was about the big payday. It was a chance for her. She was lucky to get such a job, for she was not noted for her special skills. The girl's whole life was like digging out of the mud. So even if she gets more dirty, it won't change anything for her. She wished that at least her younger siblings didn't have to live the same way. Although the name of the team sounds loud, they were only running small, dangerous errands. Sometimes these assignments became deadly. In an instant, she found herself facing the real monster, Gutchin. She was in awe of this man's incredible strength. The girl was frightened when she saw him brutally killing others. Experiencing fear, she was ready to respond to his words. Gutchin noted that she is different and knows how to assess the situation. He promised a special choice for her. The first option is to run away right now and stay alive. If the girl agrees, she will live, but everyone else will be torn to pieces by the young man. The second option is to try to kill him here and save the others. The girl couldn't believe what she was hearing. Looking at the young man, she didn't understand how she could make such a choice. Gutchin insisted she had to choose or he would make the decision himself. She was confused and frightened in front of this man. It was as if he was looking down on her from on high. Mijin felt herself under the constant pressure of his gaze. The girl didn't understand how she should proceed. They were on different levels, Gutchin looking down at her. She didn't understand how one could control a man like that. But unfortunately, time's up. Gutchin stares at his opponent with bloodshot eyes and ceases contact with her, noticing that it gives him no pleasure. The girl is shocked and frightened by his words, not understanding why she is considered uninteresting. Gutchin's eyes reflect the frightened girl. He decides it's time for her to die too. She desperately asks for some time to think. She forces herself to focus to find a way out of the situation. Gutchin approaches threateningly and the girl tries to think of something. She frantically searches for a solution, convincing herself to think faster. But the young man is getting closer and closer. The girl on the verge of panic repeats to herself what she must think to save herself. Here she decisively chooses a third course of action, announcing it out loud. Gutchin is surprised. He doesn't understand what third option we're talking about, since from his point of view there are only two. She points 3 fingers and assures me there's a third way. She notices Gutchin's nervousness, realizing that even a strong opponent is frightened by something of his own. The girl's words turn out to be true. Gutchin really does have his own problem at this point. The young man agrees. Her logic is not flawed. The girl realizes that their main miscalculation was underestimating Gutchin's true strength. She explains that underestimating such a master was their fatal mistake and it cost them their lives. The girl kneels down as a sign of humility or an admission of defeat. Gutchin looks at her in bewilderment, not expecting such a turn. She also presents something to him. The girl showed him a jar of pills, explaining that they can be used to replenish internal energy. She holds out the jar, allowing a closer look at the pills. Gutchin marvels at the number of pills saved and takes one. But then she notices that it won't be enough to just give the pills. Gutchin easily recognizes their poor quality. He says that such drugs are worthless to a true master. The girl points out that she's not so weak as to just hand them over. She remembers his words about mastery. She accuses Gutchin that he will surely find a way out since he is a true master. The girl says that Gutchin is sure to find any way out of any situation. The girl says that even if he has a problem, he is capable of winning any way he can because it's his nature. She begs she is ready to fulfill any request, only if he would tell her what he needs. Gutchin is silent and mentally acknowledges that it wouldn't matter because even if she managed to get something, it's unlikely. The girl realizes to herself that her promises are empty. She won't be able to change the situation. She mentally recognizes that Gutchin needs things far better than simple pills. She lowers her head, realizing her insignificance compared to such a man. She still bows her head, thinking that she is incapable of obtaining something so valuable. The girl realizes that even running away will not work. If she runs away alone, her brothers and sisters will die. She begins to remember her kin. Suddenly, she reached for the dagger. In the girl's memories, her younger brother and sister stand before her eyes. She decides she has to do what she has to do for her family. The girl clutched the hilt of her weapon, preparing for the decisive action. She wipes away her tears, inwardly preparing to sacrifice herself for her siblings. At this moment, the girl internally gathers the will to be brave. She decides to fight to the end and die a dignified death. The girl rushes in, challenging Gutchin. Gutchin suddenly eats grass, apparently ignoring the blades and the attack. She's confused. She doesn't understand what her opponent is doing or why he's doing it. Gutchin is delighted by the girl's guess. It turns out he had completely forgotten about the existence of the herb he's currently eating. The girl repeats in complete bewilderment, "What was the third way we were talking about?" Gutchin, sitting with his mouth full, confirms the third option did exist. He excitedly shows off the plan he found, marveling at his forgetfulness. Gutchin congratulates the girls, saying that the others will be able to get home on their own, much to her bewilderment. The girl thinks that Gutchin is clearly not lying. She feels confused and observes what is happening. Gutchin, not paying any more attention to the girl, says he's going to go eat, carrying Mijin on his back. He takes the bowl of marbles, explaining that he's going to take them and is now taking them. The girl surprisingly asks him to wait. Gutchin continues to walk away, ignoring the plea. The redhead asks in confusion, wondering if he's just leaving like that. Gutchin confirms that it is. He then threatens that if the redhead follows him one more time, she will indeed die. The girl in confusion and fear silently realizes the ultimatum. She thanks Gutchin loudly, calling him a master, and wished him good luck. Gutchin walks down the street, carrying the girl away. It was already late at night. Gutchin and Mijin gets to the right place. He ponders where to go next. Gutchin and Mijin stand together and look around. Gutchin stops in front of some building, wondering if this is the right place to go. There was a huge gate in front of him, as if it were a gateway to some demonic cult ... and yet it could be.